Support for Elwood City Limits is brought to you by Facebook,
Facebook.com/Elwood City Limits,
Twitter,
@ECL Podcast,
Tumblr,
ElwoodCityLimits.tumblr.com,
and Gmail.
ElwoodCityLimits@gmail.com.
And from listeners like you. Thank you.
And my free time.
Got to get that in there. And here we go. Well, this is a little different in a couple of ways. Now, ladies and gentlemen, fair listeners of Elwood City Limits, you may not know this, but I'm actually recording this in the morning. It's so strange to be recording something before 6 o'clock p.m. But yeah, the sun is out and the day is outstretched, so I thought, why not knock out this day bright and early with the latest episode of Elwood City Limits, where we talk about the greatest television show ever. That would be PBS Kids' Arthur. My name's Will Young, and I have a special guest with me today. Unfortunately, Lucas can't join us this week, so I decided to let our guest be our co-host as well. This person, now, he's been around since the very beginning, in a sense, so it's always been me and Lucas here on the podcast, but right when we were starting out just over a year ago, man, I didn't think anybody would want to listen to this podcast, and thankfully a lot of people have. And one of the people who I believe was there very early, an early adopter of Elwood City Limits, is also someone who's come through with handy technical advice in the year or so that we've been on the air, has come through with his own Arthur screen caps, and has just been a great support kind of behind the scenes. So I wanted to give him an opportunity to come on here to talk with us about Arthur. So please welcome my guest co-host for today. That would be Corban Garcia.
Hello, everyone.
It's good to hear from you, Corbon. And, of course, you are no stranger to audio. You have your own podcast.
Yes, I do. It's called Rocket to Anywhere. I post it every other Saturday, and it's a podcast I host with my sister where we basically go anywhere but try to learn a few things each week.
Awesome. So I'm glad to have somebody else here who has been through the ins and outs of podcastery as I have, but you are also a genuine Arthur fan. What's your experience with Arthur throughout the years?
Well, I grew up just watching PBS because, we didn't do cable or anything, so really only kids channel we had here in the U.S. was PBS. So that's what we would watch, and I started watching Arthur every day before school. And that's really where I fell in love with it. And from there, I started watching it. After that, came up here. Now I'm older. I started watching it on YouTube and here and there. And then I found your podcast through Reddit, the Reddit subreddit for Arthur. And thanks to that, I've been listening to your podcast for a couple of months.
Yes, thank you to all of the Redditors who have spread the good word about Elwood City Limits. If you're on the, I haven't been on Reddit in a long time, so I don't know if there's like an R podcast. I know there's an R Arthur in kind of my search for things, but I, of course, didn't want to just go on there to promote the show. So if anybody else, a regular Redditor, wants to spread the good word of Elwood City Limits, would very much appreciate it. So Corbon, you and me are going to get into this episode today, but before we do, this is actually something you're going to be the first guest to help me answer a couple of emails.
All right.
So these emails are connected. We have two of them. They're pretty short, and they're kind of connected to one another. This first one is from Joshua. He says, "Hi, guys. I enjoy your Arthur podcast." He listens to it with his brother. Anyway, he has a couple of questions. How would it change the Arthur universe if DW liked and owned Pal and Arthur did not? So a little bit of alternate realities here, Corbin.
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I guess Arthur would kind of take the same mentality DW has towards Pal now and kind of like, oh, DW, get your dog out of here or something like that.
Mm-hmm. I think, I think you're on the right track. I mean, it's all alternate realities, so for all I know, you could be right. But I think Pal would definitely take a lot after DW, and it would be kind of Arthur would have two foils in his home life rather than just one.
Yeah.
So it's funny. That doesn't seem all that. Unusual, I guess. Like I could totally see that happening, and they just kind of maybe decided not to do it. So an interesting question there, Joshua. And
I
he
think
also,
later on in Arthur episodes, DW gets a frog or something as a pet, but like secretly has it. But then her parents are like, no, you can't have that as a pet.
Yeah, there was an early episode with Toady, which Lucas and I were not so much a fan of, and I don't know if he shows up again. I mean, there are 18 other seasons apart from this one, so maybe Toady makes a comeback. We'll have to see, but he's not exactly the factor that Pal is. Also, he asked for us to give a shout out to his brother Isaac, and a happy birthday, Isaac! Thanks a lot for getting in touch with us.
Yeah, shout out to Isaac. Happy birthday.
And we also actually got an email from the very same email from Isaac himself. This one. So he's got a couple questions. They go a little bit out there. So get ready for this. If Arthur punched DW again, would she die?
I don't know. I don't think so.
I feel like DW probably built up a bit of a resistance. She's a growing kid, and I think that, you know what, probably the next time Arthur tries to punch her, she'd probably do some of that like Bruce Lee, or like if you ever played the video game God Hand, just like tilting the joystick around, and she's just like, it'd be like a Dragon Ball Z fight where they're just kind of hitting each other's after image. That would actually be pretty cool. Who would Mr. Haney punch if he got provoked?
Probably the secretary, because I've seen in some later episodes that she messes up a couple things here and there throughout the school, and I'm guessing that's probably what would happen.
All right, so Miss Tingley, I think it's more of a situation where if Mr. Haney were to go to punch somebody, like he would swing like 5 feet to their left and then like trip over something and fall into a broom closet. And finally, could Binky beat Superman if he was as strong as Buster thought he was? So there's been a couple of instances where like Buster and Arthur have imagined Binky being so strong that he like kicks them into the stratosphere, or like where he collapses the school as soon as he shuts the door. Do you think that is Superman levels? Would we see like a dark side Superman style throwdown if Binky were that strong?
I think Superman has the advantage of flight, though.
Yeah, that's the thing, is that he's got this whole like cadre of other powers, like you said, flight, X-ray vision. He's got like cold breath and all that kind of stuff. So it would just purely have to be strength for strength. So Binky may be at a disadvantage no matter what.
Yeah, that's what I think.
Yeah, okay. All right, well, Joshua and Isaac, thank you very much both for the emails. If you'd like to send yours in, elwoodcitylimits@gmail.com. Okay, after much deliberation on our parts, let's get to today's episode. We're starting off with one that I was very interested to go back and revisit. It's Arthur versus the Very Mean Crossing Guard.
Yeah, this is an episode I remember, well, like one of the first I remember seeing on TV, so this is from a while back.
Yeah, it is. From about, I think we're into like 1998 as far as the production schedule goes. Okay. So it starts off with the cold open. Arthur's looking for monsters under DW's bed and talking about how gullible she is, which of course is something that a lot of 4-year-olds can definitely be. And he talks about all the ways that he's fooled her. There's a couple ones like he convinces her that like sweaters are animals, so she's like going into the closet with one of those Grabo extendo arm toys that a couple of my friends had as a kid, or that you if you pull the plug in the bathtub, then you will sink down with it. Corbon, is your sister, who you co-host the podcast with, is she older or younger?
She's about 2 years younger than me.
Did you ever fool her in the way that Arthur has fooled DW?
I've tried, but she's much too smart for that.
She's really smart, eh?
Yeah, she'd figure it out. I mean, she'd believe it for like 2 minutes or so, and then she'd like come with the fact, like, no, that can't be true.
Okay, so you couldn't really ever try and fool her. Like, what was something that you tried to get her to believe?
Well, this is more of not like a fact to believe, but something like a prank I tried to pull on her. I talked about this on our podcast last week's episode, but I tried to make her believe outside. I know this is like super weird, but this is just what super young me thought was funny, to believe that it was actually a sunrise instead of a sunset outside because she had napped through the day. I know this is pretty terrible, but I went outside. I started playing like bird noises on a tiny iPod. It didn't fool her.
Well, not for lack of trying. That's actually
Yeah.
a pretty good commitment to the bit. So I have to commend you for that. But I understand. My sister is older than me, so I don't remember if she ever tried to fool me on anything. Although she did always like to lord over the fact that she was smarter than me, at least when I was a kid.
Yeah.
So I understand that. Arthur also mentions past the cold open to the brain. Arthur and the brain are kind of the main two of this episode. That he fooled her into thinking that his bionic bunny poster could talk and could tell him when she's been in his room. So Arthur and the brain are kind of the duo here, and they're kind of celebrating the fact that DW is very gullible. But then we get the inciting incident of this whole thing. There's a new crossing guard cross. It's kind of like a it's funny. I never had these types of crosswalks when I was a kid where there's like a partition in the middle. It was always kind of like a straight shot through. So in the middle, that's where the crossing guard is, and he has to take him through 2 lanes of traffic. And the old crossing guard, or rather the regular one, is on vacation. So he's kind of chilling in the partition here. I've never seen this before, where a crossing guard gets to like chill out in a lawn chair until he has to like do his job. I thought that makes it seem a little bit like the life.
Yeah, that's a little weird because down the street from my house, they have a crossing guard because there's a school pretty close, and they have 2 crossing guards because there is a partition in the middle of the street. Granted, it is a pretty big street because a lot of traffic goes through there, but they usually have 1 traffic guard on one side and 1 on the other side, and then they crisscross back and forth helping kids. But I've never seen anything like that before.
I will mention here as well that Arthur and Brain use the word gullible. Like Arthur has to ask him what it means. This is once again, like I feel like this should be like a regular segment maybe of like words I learned from Arthur. Gullible is definitely one of them. I didn't hear it until I heard it on this episode.
Yeah,
when I was a kid, I've definitely heard it many times by now.
Yeah.
So the crossing guard like kind of takes them across the street. Like they don't think anything too much of it yet, but then when they get to the end, he asks them for $10, and there's a great like double take, and they're just like $10. They kind of say in sequence. I thought that was funny. And so he gets into this whole kind of thing where it's like you can tell, the both of us are adults and we can kind of tell, okay, he's just kind of ribbing these kids and just like, but at that age, you got to be real clear when you're joking with them because what he does is like, he's just like, didn't they tell you $10 to cross the street? And they're like, we don't have $10. And he's kind of letting it go a little bit of like, you expected to cross the street for free? Yeah. And then he doesn't, at this point it would be like, I got you kids, don't worry about it. But like he leaves them with like, okay, give me my $10 or I'll send my goons after you.
Yeah, I feel like he should have like stopped as he realized their facial expressions like they're believing this. But then I could also see his mindset for, well, let me just keep taking this farther.
Yeah, I just think it's a sort of thing where like you have to, or at least my feeling on it would be like, all right, I can only rib them so much. I gotta just be like, okay, kids, don't worry about it. I'm just kidding. And this, stresses them both out, which is funny. I've mentioned time and time again how Arthur is the anxious sort, and he kind of reads a lot into everything, but Brain is kind of right there with him. Brain's usually the voice of reason, but him and Arthur both fall hook, line, sinker. They both go to Brain's house, and Brain, one of his many inventions, he's so smart.
Yeah, smart little piggy bank that when he pulls the tail, it reads how much money is inside of it.
I contain $5.37. Oink. And it even does the oink, and so Brain's like, Arthur, I don't have enough money to cross the street.
Yeah.
And we get one of the ones, kind of these semi-regular imaginations of like very specific of like a character who is destitute into their like adulthood. We saw this in the episode where Arthur couldn't get off the bus because the bus driver wouldn't let him off, and this is actually exactly the same thing with Brain, where it's like an imagination where he's stuck on the partition, and Muffy comes up in like a crosswire limo and says, "Nobody's seen you since 3rd grade," and Brain is clearly like outstretched his normal clothes. Like I would guess he's probably at least a teenager, if not an adult.
Yeah.
And he's just like, I can't get across. I could only pay like $5.37 worth, so I can't get across. I need the other $4 and whatever. And Muffy just kind of leaves him high and dry. So I thought it was funny that they kind of did it again. I also have the episode kind of open here right now, and I'm actually, it's about 4 minutes in, and I noticed something in the background I didn't notice before. So there's a shot of Brain on the partition as he's talking to Muffy, and in the background there's something that kind of looks like, to me, as a Canadian, it kind of looks like the CN Tower, or it could be like
I noticed that. I thought it was like some futuristic.
Or maybe, okay, you know what? Maybe that's what it is. It's probably just like, it's the future.
Yeah, but what everyone thought future towers would look like and stuff.
Yeah, and I was just thinking that, well, this we've kind of established that this is like somewhere in the Boston area, and I don't know if there's any like big skyscraping towers like the Space Needle or what have you in the Boston area.
Not that I know of. I almost went on a trip to Boston, but some plans changed before. But from what I've seen in pictures and stuff, I've never seen anything like that. I mean, you have your typical skyscrapers, but nothing like that.
Yeah, you have a bit of a leg up on me in this. You are also an American, but not from the Boston area.
No, I'm down here in Texas.
Ooh, what's the temperature over there?
Surprisingly, this time of year, it's supposed to be like 100 degrees, and it's actually starting to get cooler. If I can pull up my weather right now, it's getting pretty cool.
Okay, I mean it's same over here. I guess ignorantly perhaps I always think of like, oh, Texas, it's always hot down there, but I guess it's got to cool down sometime.
Yeah, it usually is. I have a friend who always jokes that fall or autumn weather only lasts for 2 days, and then it's back to summer.
Lucky you. So that's Brain's kind of anxiety about the whole thing, but Arthur's hung up on the goons, like the throwaway line that he had about like sending his goons, and neither of them know what that means. And this leads to a dream, like an imagination sequence that I thought was kind of funny, like when you think about it afterwards. So it's Arthur imagining that he's in bed and he gets woken up by these baboons in like street clothing. They look like like I could almost imagine them being like an earlier type of Disney villain. Like I was watching.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Yeah,
when I saw the way they dressed, I was thinking I feel like I've seen them in a Disney movie before.
Yeah, and like an older one. So they're like, I imagine them as kind of. I was watching 101 Dalmatians recently, and the villains of their Horace and Jasper, like they both have like the type of like sweaters and like hats and stuff like that. Just real blue collar type of guys. Anyway, there's a great line here of Arthur rightfully being scared and asking, "Are you the goons?" And one of them just says, "Of course not. We're baboons." I'm like, oh, okay, that makes sense. So they're like the harbinger for the goons who will be along later, and they're really scary.
Yeah, we're coming along to check out what's here.
Yeah, to case the joint and to like smash up Arthur's things. So so they both realize that they need another plan to get across the street because they don't have the $10 to pay. The next day, Brain uses, again, some of the stick figure drawings that we saw in an earlier episode. In fact, just a couple of episodes ago, we get back to Brain with the stick figure drawings, so he's a couple plans here.
And I was noticing in his drawing style here, back from Love Notes for Muffy, that it's sort of the same style. If you've seen the original Magic School Bus that DA uses when she has little ideas, and it's sort of the same drawing style.
Okay, all right. So Brain's ideas, again, he really kind of overestimates what he can do. Like, I guess overestimates his, maybe not his own intelligence, but his own, like, actual success in this sort of ability. Thank you. So his first one is that he could build a bridge to go over the cross rock, which is like this giant suspension bridge that he's able to just lift on his own. But his only drawback is storing it. I would think, building it, conceptualizing it, getting the permits for it, that would be the drawback.
Yeah.
His next one is to build a tunnel, or like to just pickaxe his way through a tunnel, but his drawback is directions, and he just kind of ends up where he started, essentially. And then the third one is getting a hot air balloon, which actually, when you think about it, is kind of the most plausible of the three.
Yeah.
Bafflingly. But his drawback is rather involved. It's being blown off course, ending up in a strange land, and having to declare himself wizard, which of course is a reference to the Wizard of Oz. But like,
we saw the one of the the classic house on top of the person thing. I can't place the name on it. What's it called?
The Wicked Witch of the East.
Yes, the witch. That's right.
Right.
You would think I would remember that because it's Halloween season, but
yeah, the Wizard of Oz isn't. It's got a witch in it, but it's not really a Halloween movie. So if you haven't seen it in a while, it's totally understandable.
Yeah.
Those are his drawbacks, and Arthur's like, wow, you really thought this through. So it doesn't really apply to Arthur so much because he doesn't have to use the crosswalk unless he goes to Brain's house, and Brain's the one who has to face down the crossing guard once again. And he asks Arthur if he wants to come over, and Arthur's like, I'd better save my money for when I really need to see you.
Yeah.
This is really messing with their heads. And again, Brain kind of talks with the crossing guard of just like, he's like, well, there goes one half of the gruesome twosome. Where's your partner in crime? And like, ain't I seen your face on a wanted poster somewhere? It's like, when I was a kid, this crossing guard, like, he really was mean and scary. But as an adult, it's just like, oh, he's so clearly messing with them and is just like not very good at determining like if he's really scaring them.
Mm-hmm. And he said, didn't I see your mug on a poster down at the post office? And I'm not sure if they do this in Canada, but I know here in the U.S. for a while we used to post like top 5 or top 10 most wanted posters in the post office. So I always thought that was a little weird.
Oh, no, I don't think that. I mean, given that I work for a postal service, I don't think so. But then again, I don't spend much time in post offices anymore. That's interesting. I figured that was more of an American thing, or it could be other parts of Canada as well. So he kind of intimidates Brain of just like, I've got eyes and ears everywhere. I'm on to you. And this gives Brain like an actual bad dream, a nightmare, where he uses the crosswalk so much that he essentially goes into banker's debt, and his parents have to sell the house, and they like take it away on wheels, kind of like in The Simpsons when they move Springfield down like a mile, and they just kind of take it away on wheels, and they have to live in the same like area, like the same plot of land as the house, but just in a tent. And it just ends with the crossing guard putting up a framed picture of his cat, and he is the one who sees the house and taking it to where, I couldn't tell you. Brain's determined to figure out if he's really installed like cameras into where they are. They go to Arthur's place and start thinking that he maybe installed cameras, which I think... kind of talking about how the crossing guard, I might have said security guard earlier, excuse me. The crossing guard, he said stuff like, I've got cameras everywhere. That's not the kind of thing you can say to a kid and it being okay. I think that's where it kind of goes a little too far for like a casual jokey joke.
Mm-hmm. Especially nowadays, like if someone said that.
Oh, forget about it. That is that is way over the line. But I mean, it not to say that it isn't here too, but it's just like, all right, well, I think this is a little bit too far. Brain and Arthur think that Arthur's room has been bugged, and they think even there could be something in Stanley, Arthur's bear. And there's a moment here where they kind of talk in code, which kind of sounds like their approximation of like. It's supposed to be spy code, but it also kind of reminded me of like the type of jargon that a 1920s detective would have. It's like the penny jar sure is mean. That's right. It's almost as bad as the rug.
I could figure out the first part, like the penny jar sure is mean, but almost as bad as as bad as the rug. I couldn't really figure out what he was saying.
So I'm guessing the penny jar is the crossing guard?
Yeah.
Oh, you know what? That actually kind of works because he's like squeezing pennies out of them. Okay, I kind of get that. I have no idea what the rug could be.
Yeah, me neither.
So Brain is over at Arthur's place for a sleepover because this is their way of kind of beating the system for at least a night, and then they get an idea of what they can do the next day. Grandma Thora is looking after them, and they just ask Grandma for a ride to school, which is really funny because so I grew up in a neighborhood where I could walk to school, and I was expected to walk to school every day, and it just reminded me that, man, when I was a kid, getting a ride to school was such a luxury. Like, it was just like, oh, I'll give you a ride to school today. I'm like, this is the best day ever.
Yeah, I never had to walk to school because I went to school pretty far away, and my mom was a teacher there, so I got to ride with her to school.
Oh, that's awesome. And we weren't on a bus route either, so it was either walk or some days get a ride. And I just remember how great that felt because I hated walking to school at the time.
Especially during winter times.
Yeah, for sure. So Grandma Thora is going to pick them up from school, and that's their way to circumvent it. As they're kind of pulling up to the crosswalk where the crossing guard is, they kind of duck in the back seat, and they're just like, watch out, Grandma, for that security guard. I keep saying that because I don't say crossing guard regularly. Watch out for him. He's really mean. And then Grandma Thora says, Ted? Oh, he's a pussy cat. And I was like, no, lady, he's a rat. Arthur says he wants money from us, and Grandma Thora pulls over to kind of talk to him, and because she takes that at face value. And then DW's in the car with them, and Arthur's just like, he said that he's got cameras on us and he's going to send his goons after us, and they're both really scared. And DW just laughs at them and is just like, I can't believe that you guys actually bought that.
Yeah, she says, you guys will believe anything. Yeah,
and that kind of didn't make sense to me. Like, in the cold open and even here coming up to the end of the episode, like DW, I mean, I guess there's a thing. So I will just say quickly at the end of the episode, like Arthur is going to intimidate her about the monsters under her bed, but then admits there aren't any. And DW says, I know that. I've always known that. But there are, like, we've clearly seen other instances where DW believes some outlandish things.
Yeah.
And I don't understand, like, why she wouldn't at least be like, whoa, really? Like, but she immediately knows it's BS. And I'm like, I don't understand why that's different from the stuff in, like, the cold open.
Yeah, I'm not sure, because if they were going to talk about DW being the one who's always gullible and stuff, I was wondering, like, well, then why would they stick her as the cold open? Maybe to set, like, a example, but I found that a little confusing.
Yeah, it was a little bit of a leap, and I mean, it's just kind of to show how ridiculous it all is when you lay it out in black and white, but just like, I don't know, it just didn't make sense for DW to do that. Anyway, Grandma Thora brings Ted, the crossing guard, to the car, and he kind of apologizes to them that he was just kind of joking around with them, and Arthur and Brain just kind of laugh it off. As I said, there's a part near the end here where Arthur admits to DW there aren't monsters under the bed, but he still checks anyway at her behest. And the episode ends with them at the crosswalk, and now I thought this was a little fun. Arthur and Brain are in on the joke now, so it's like kind of a bit of a secret language the three of them have of just like, like, I heard it's dangerous across the street, and Brain's like, could be inhabited by goons. So at least they ended in a kind of a more fun place than where it started, perhaps.
Yeah.
And now a word from us kids.
And now a word from us kids.
Did you see this one?
Yes, I did.
So this one is all about, well, I thought it was a little funny because it's like myths we all believed when we were little, and, well, they are still little. I mean, I'm sure that there's some stuff they'll believe that in 10 years will probably seem just as ridiculous. But it's stuff they believe when they were very, very small, these real-life kids. And I'll just go through a couple of the hits here. A lot of kind of similar themes. Like, one big one was, like, things being other things. So it's like, I thought spaghetti was worms. I thought tomatoes were apples. I thought a fridge was a restaurant. I thought a basketball was an orange. So kind of stuff like that. And a lot of other ones, like, I guess the other theme would be, like, entertainment being real. So, like, the TV can turn on by itself. Books can talk. And, like, the TV could come out of the TV, which I'm sure I believed at some point. Was there anything you could think of, like a myth that you believed when you were little, that kind of you realize now is ridiculous?
When I was working on my notes, I was trying to come up with something, but I really just couldn't guess anything. And I tried asking my siblings, and they're like, well, I don't know. I guess I've been a pretty grounded person from what they've told me. I'm pretty sure there's something out there. But as for this word from his kids, the last kid who says, oh, buses, I used to think city buses were just buses, but now I believe that they're buses with lasers that are trying to shoot everyone. And I thought, well, he's the only one who didn't have an improvement.
Yeah, man, I must have missed that one. And I'm afraid I can't think of anything either. I must have blocked it out. But I'm sure at some point I thought, like, oh, this TV show, it's real, and I think I've seen. You know what? I remember one time, a friend of mine came to school and was like, he's like, so my friend was going by this house, and he totally heard like a Cubone, like a Pokemon. He totally heard Pikachu and Cubone in this house, and I'm like, oh, no way, Pokemon's real, but that kind of stuff. And it does end on a note that really made me laugh. It's like a lot of these times these segments will end with the kids like saying something to the camera all together, and this one was, "What do you believe?" Which I thought was funny. It's like a bunch of kids yelling at you, asking you what your beliefs are. I'm like, oh, I wasn't ready for this, but when I started watching this.
And now, back to Arthur.
All right, let's move on to the second half. It is DW's Very Bad Mood, which is another one I was wondering. I thought this was going to be a little bit later, and like maybe into the next season or something. But yeah, we're talking about it right now, and this is one of the more notable openings, I think. We often talk about like, oh, this opening was awesome and all. Like even in the very last episode we did, the basketball opening. That's one of my favorites. This isn't. I don't know if it's a favorite, but it's definitely one that you don't forget.
Yeah, I sort of, from watching Arthur a lot, I started to just remember like a lot of the openings. I don't remember the actual episode, but like the openings are always like stuck in my head.
Yeah, like it's. I mean, once you see it, it's very striking in many ways. It's. I mean, it starts off on a really creepy note because it's obviously meant to be emulating like Leave It to Beaver. It's a very perfect idyllic family. So immediately you know that something's wrong, even as a kid. And like they do everything they can to sell it. Like Arthur's voice actor Michael Yarmush, he kind of adopts a very squeaky clean, overly perfect tone, and it's like very strange. Like he's just like, it's really nice when you have a perfect family. Like he goes up a whole register. And again, he's a very talented voice actor, even as a kid. And it's funny, like Arthur still in school, but he looks like he's going to the construction site. He's got his red flannels on. He's got his worker hat. It's just like, it looks like he's doing a full shift at the plant or something. His mother is like, dressed stereotypically feminine, of just like, long hair, very motherly, and like a skirt and whatnot. His dad is dressed up in a suit, and he's got like the Homer Simpson comb over. It's like the three squiggly hairs to make it look like he means business, because of course normally he doesn't have much hair to speak of. Francine and Brain show up at the door to walk with Arthur to school, although his dad offers him a ride. If my friends came up and be like, you want to walk to school, I'd be like, hell no. Francine has pigtails, like, again, very stereotypically girly, and Brain's just kind of normal-ish. And, Arthur's just like, you see, my life is practically perfect, except for one thing. And then we get, like, the Jurassic Park, like, vibration in the water sort of thing, and, like, the house starts to quake, and then all of a sudden, like, the front door busts open, and giant hands reach inside, and all of a sudden, this cold opening is directed by Gareth Edwards, because we've got DW Zilla over here.
Yeah.
It's a giant DW, and, like, her voice has been pitched, like, to kind of, I guess, like, I don't know the word, but it's just like, the thing that they do to make someone sound like a monster. They have their normal voice channel and then like the pitch down version. So there's kind of like two at the same time. It's just like, where's my breakfast? And
if you noticed in the background, the music playing sort of sounds like the Imperial March from Star Wars. Did you notice that?
No, I didn't actually.
It was like boom, 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 boom.
Yeah, that classic too. No, I really didn't, because I got to be honest, I was a little distracted by Attack on DW over here. She just it's like she starts wrecking the house, and then she just starts like she goes downtown and is like stomping on buildings, and people are running for their lives, and that's just kind of how the cold opening ends. It's like,
Yeah.
how do you forget about this?
Mm-hmm.
It's definitely one of the more memorable ones. And the funny thing here is that when we start the actual episode, we're used to Arthur talking to the camera, addressing the camera in the cold open, and I don't think he's ever really done it in the actual episode. But he breaks with tradition here. Like, Arthur is at the breakfast table and he goes, "Okay, maybe that's an exaggeration."
Yeah.
But DW's been really bad lately, and it actually took me by surprise of like, "Oh, this is weird to have Arthur address the camera."
The only time I can actually remember Arthur talking directly to the camera during an episode is, I think, back in season 1, where Buster was hanging out with the cool kids or something, and he was gonna eat something. I don't quite remember that.
Yeah, and I think even that one was like Arthur did a whole like freeze, like what do you call it? 90210 freeze frame in that cold opening. I don't even think he addressed the camera after that. So. If I'm wrong about that, hey, people, let me know. But first time for everything. And DW, as the episode title itself says, is in a really bad mood. And it's been going on for a while. And it's been driving Arthur nuts. She's got, like, she even at the breakfast table, like, I must say, again, with the voice acting, I'm sure DW's voice actor really had to use the hot tea and honey for this one, because she's yelling a lot of just like...
Yeah.
Like, I don't want to eat this cereal's too soggy. I'm not going to eat it. You can't make me eat it. Do you hear me? Do you? She's like, this whole episode, she's like cutting promos on people. It's really, it must have been a big wear on the vocal muscle. So the episode really starts at the Sugar Bowl, where Francine is handing out invitations to her birthday party, and like she hands one to Arthur, and like he is fried. It's you know, the kind of thing of just like he has been up for he looks like he's been up for several days. I just probably just got barely any sleep, because one of the things that DW is really into right now is complaining as she goes to bed, as we see in like a cutaway, and then like slamming the door all night long. She's like I won't feel better in the morning. Slam. I won't. Slam. I won't. Slam. And Arthur even says she did that all night long. That's torturous, man. Mm-hmm. And it did kind of give me like a little bit of pause of just like, oh, great, this is what I have to look forward to when I start to be a dad. Great. Can't wait for nights when my daughter keeps me up by slamming the door. And I get to live Arthur's nightmare, essentially, his waking nightmare.
Speaking of that, something I noticed, but there's no like reference to baby Kate there, and I would think, well, she would probably be crying, especially since she's in DW's room.
That's a great point, and I didn't think of that myself. You're right. They both share a room, and I mean, I think I have this point later in the I think I have this point later in my notes of just like, okay, there's got to be a point where the parents are like knock that crap off. Like, it's really got to stop. And I would feel like as soon as the baby is disturbed, which she absolutely would be, you're right, in this scenario, then it would be like, okay, we're gonna fix this once and for all. So you're right. Like, baby Kate is an absolute non-factor in this story.
Unless she's a really heavy sleeper.
Yeah. I mean, or... I was gonna say maybe this was before she was born, but I think Arthur would be like in a completely different grade from then, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
Although I guess it could be. Oh, but no, but Pal has the red collar in this episode. Okay, so this just doesn't make sense. That's a very good point. I'm glad that you brought it up. Brain at the Sugar Bowl says that he'd like to do an experiment on Arthur's fried brain at this point. And Arthur, again, like, he's very weary, he's very tired, and he's very short with people. Like, Francine says, have you tried asking her what's wrong? And then Arthur's just like, why don't you ask her? And and then Francine's like, all right, I will. Like, give her an inch and she will take a mile. Oh, okay, here's where I have the note of just like Francine was invited to dinner. And
Yeah.
DW starts acting up at the dinner table. Like, she starts like taking handfuls of fries and shoving it into her mouth, which same. But not when company is there. And DW's like, you're always picking on me. You never pick on anyone else. And then just like really starts cutting promos on like Arthur and stuff. And this, I think at this point, I would be like, okay, you can yell your face off, but when company's here, you got to be nice. Like I can just imagine the type of speech that my mother would give to me if I were doing this. First of all, it would be bookended by a spanking, either before or after. I will tell you that much. But I'm surprised DW doesn't really see any consequences for this. And then Francine straight up asks her while she's in the middle of this. She says, "What's the matter with you?" And DW runs off crying. Francine goes to her room and does, like, really, to her credit, try and ask her what's wrong, which I can't believe nobody else has done yet. She did, says, "I'm sorry I hurt your feelings, but you were being a total doofus," which is certainly the Arthur way of saying something a little bit stronger. And DW does have a couple of good lines in this episode, as she usually does when the episode's about her. She just, like, her face is buried in her pillow, and she's just, between sobs, she's just like, "Who asked you? You don't even live here." The other funny thing that she does is that DW is able to, like, turn on a dime emotionally, and I think it's just because of the fact that, like, she's not really sad, she's just more kind of self-pitying, and so she's able to really so like in the middle of crying, she's like, she goes from that thing of just like, she goes from that affectation that the voice actor does of like, "You don't really love me," and then she goes, "Wait, Francine, can I ask you a question?" And then that sort of thing, and she's gonna say something mean to her, and she's like, "I'm too tired to think of any more mean things to say," and then just that's the end of that one. Francine asked the next day if it helped, and then Arthur says no, she was even worse. I thought our neighbors were gonna call the cops, and then we get a little bit of an imagination of a theoretical TV show, which actually I'd be kind of interested to see how they solve this one. It's called Tantrum 911, but they also call it the card says Tantrum 911, but the announcer says Temper Tantrum Patrol Squad, and and so it's like examples of them going around to like kids who are misbehaving, and essentially it's cops for kids, pretty much. And it starts off at the Reed house, where there's like a helicopter shining its light. There's like several squad cars, and it's like DW got 5 stars in GTA. I was just waiting for like the Marines to come in with their tank or whatever. So a couple of police make their way in like almost riot gear, not like helmets. There's like one kind of plainclothes cop, and then there's like 2 of them dressed in like bulletproof vests, and they go up to DW's room. And DW has a great, again, really cutting a promo here on the police. They're like, "You have the right to remain silent." She's like, "I will not remain silent. I'll be as loud as I want. Like, you can't stop me. No one can stop me."
Yeah.
Who made you the boss of the world? So I thought that was really funny. And then right after they're done, Biggie's like, "Wow, that show sounds great. What time is it on?"
Yeah, I want to see that.
Yeah, really. Binky and Brain are eating with Arthur and Francine, and they say like they've got to find a way for to help DW, and I think they decide to kind of spy on her at this point, to like stake her out and see what's going on. Brain and Binky are like any excuse to get out of there, of just like, Brain's like, "Sorry, but I have to clean my garage," and Binky's like, "And I have to clean my garage too. Huh, what a coincidence." So Arthur and Francine are staking out DW as she's eating a sandwich outside.
And this isn't the first time they've staked out DW, because they also had the previous time with the safety whistle, and they were trying to figure out something wrong she would do.
Yeah, that's right. And again, kind of recurring themes in this season. So they see her like, she's eating a bologna sandwich. She spits the bologna into her hand and throws it on the ground. And Pal starts to eat it, and Arthur totally breaks their cover, just like, "Pal, put that down." And DW immediately sees them, just like,
Yeah.
"Quiet, spies don't yell." So that was kind of funny. The next part is something that I would think would get them in trouble with their parents. Arthur is staked out of her room while she's asleep on the phone with Francine, and I don't know how long he's been out there, but they have got to be racking up that phone bill.
Yeah.
That is going to cost them. Like, their parents are going to come to them of just like, why did you make a call to Francine for 2.5 hours?
Mm-hmm.
At like,
and at night.
Yeah, at like 11 o'clock at night when everybody's asleep. And so DW is pretending to be asleep, and she's like talking in her sleep. She's just like, oh, it's all wrong. It's all wrong because Arthur is a dodo brain. And then Arthur repeats that to Francine. And their final thing is that they stake her out at her preschool, and Arthur doesn't seem to notice anything, but what Francine notices is that there's a group of kids that kind of come into their way and start talking about a birthday party they're going to. Mm-hmm. And Arthur's like, she's looking right at us. But no, it's actually, she is looking directly at the kids who are talking about the birthday party. So we get a little bit of a clue of what's to come. Okay, so this is definitely an Arthur meme alert here. I've seen this in GIF form many times. And in fact, I've used this very clip on the show. It's Francine coming into the Reed house, and DW goes, Francine, can I ask you a question? Why don't you go back to your own house and stop bothering us? Which is ruthless. And that's actually kind of where Mom is starts to take a little bit of action of just like, this being mean to everyone has got to stop. And I'm like, this sounds like this has been going on for weeks. The time to stop it was well before this.
Mm-hmm.
So DW says she would feel better if she got to see Quasi Cool Kittens, The Journey Home, which I must say, like, as far as fake movie titles go, I totally believe that could be a kid's movie.
Yeah, I could totally see that from like a small production company somewhere.
And you know what? It's The Journey Home that really sells it. It sounds like a Homeward Bound movie.
Yeah.
So to which Mom says DW has already seen that twice, but Francine agrees to take her, and Arthur kind of has like a mild panic attack. It just cuts to his face. He's like, like he really doesn't want to be with DW in that theater, in that movie of all places. So this whole scene of them at the movie is DW being crabby, and then all of a sudden the kids who were having the birthday party from a couple of scenes before come into the theater and sit right ahead of them, and then DW immediately again turns on an emotional dime and pretends to have the time of her life, and so that her friend, I think her name is Lucy, I want to say.
I think
the little,
I should have written it down.
Yeah, the little rabbit girl. Anyway, I'm gonna say her name is Lucy. Excuse me if that's incorrect, everybody. She's laughing hard enough so that Lucy will notice her because it's her birthday that they're having. It's her and 3 of her other friends. And DW is kind of doing the preschool version of posting pics of her new boyfriend on social. She's just like, I'm having fun, loads and loads of fun. And she's even like, it's like, I'm here with my friends and we're having fun because I have lots and lots of friends. And
here Francine starts laughing too, which I notice is a little weird.
Yeah, she kind of tries to sell it a little bit, even though she doesn't really know what's going on with DW. And it's just like, I have lots of friends, I'm really popular, and then it's the most transparent thing in the world, and Lucy sees through it immediately, and DW is a little heartbroken. And this kind of made me wonder. I think, let me just check here. Yeah, so DW's friend Emily is part of that birthday crew. I wonder if DW's unpopular at preschool. I wonder if she has any friends, or maybe she has alienated them.
I mean, the Tibbles are always going after her, and there's also Emily, which we know from earlier episodes, I believe, or maybe it's later on, but that they're pretty good friends. But other than that, and there's James too, but I think other than that, DW really doesn't have any friends there.
Yeah, and she's kind of been frenemies at points with Emily, so I don't know how really close they are. But it's she's a little bit of a preschool pariah, and I identify with this. I'll tell you this: when I was DW's age, I was about 5. When I was in grade primary, which would be kindergarten elsewhere. In retrospect, I was a little bit more DW than I should have been. I was a little bit more mean, because of course kids, and I, this isn't not that this is an excuse or anything, but like, kids don't really have a filter, and like I wasn't doing any bullying or anything, but like pulling chairs out from under people, just being kind of loud and obnoxious, and I don't think I was very well liked. And I remember at the end of the school year, somebody was having a birthday party, and the teacher asked, "Who are you going to invite to your birthday?" And the guy who would go on to be my friend said, "Everybody except for Will." So that kind of brought me back to like, oh yes, I remember being a preschool pariah as well. So DW is immediately like angry, frustrated, and DW is like, I don't feel good. I want to go home. And Arthur's like, DW, we just got here. Wait a minute, what am I saying? Let's go. So
Yeah.
that was really funny. He even invokes, he says, she's driving me absolutely bus-a-looey, which it must be a serious situation if Arthur's using that. Francine decides to take control, and she and DW go to get ice cream and kind of let Arthur off the hook, which is where Francine finally gets an answer out of, or rather, she doesn't get an answer, but she more kind of puts the pieces together. Like she says, I know that you're upset because you weren't invited to the birthday party. And DW's like, what birthday party? But, she eventually does suss that out of DW. And DW asks for help from Francine. Like, she starts crying again, more out of self-pity. And then we get into this, what I call DW's power fantasy of what she would really most like to do. And it's, so she's imagining the four of these girls having this birthday party, and I will say on a background that is seems somewhat separated from what's the action that's happening, and we'll see why in a second. And what she wants most in the world is to invade the party on like a blimp, on like almost like a Zeppelin, but like on a real villain blimp. And she's and she even has, she's like cackling from her blimp and like, time to rain on their little parade.
And that line right there was, I'm not sure if I have to get to work with a lot of children's television.
Okay.
But the way she delivers that line there sounds a lot like the character Luna Girl from this show called PJ Masks. And like it was super similar to the way that character delivers her lines.
Okay, no, that's completely new to me. So you know better than I would. Apparently, this blimp, which it's best not to think about how DW got it or how it works. It also has weather control? Question mark, question mark, question mark. And she just literally makes it rain, and not in the good way with money. Like actually makes it rain on their birthday. To which point, not only does it like melt this triple tiered cake. Lisa is the girl's name, not Lucy.
Yes,
I was very close. It doesn't just melt Lisa's birthday cake, but it also goes even farther, and it melts all of the color out of their world, which I remember when I was a kid was a little upsetting.
Yeah, it's just like washing everything out. And something I noticed here, when they're dancing around the cake, they're singing the Ponyland theme song.
Yes, I thought of that too. In fact, I was going to write it down. I'm like, I don't know if anybody will notice that. But to be fair, you did. So maybe I'd better keep that stuff in mind. You're right. And it's like the exact same audio clip and everything. But yeah, like they get their color washed out and they're just like crying and like stomping around as the color drains out. It's really kind of cruel. And Francine even says, that sounds kind of mean. To which DW is like, well, they were mean first. And then Francine comes up with an idea for how to make DW feel better. And the end of the episode is the next morning, where DW gets a piece of mail, which is apparently very rare. It's a card with like a bunch of confetti in it, and her mom reads it to her of DW is invited to Francine's birthday party, to which Arthur is horrified. Like he is just downright offended. And the episode ends with Mom saying like, what a nice friend Francine is, and Arthur just like, oh. So there you go. Okay, let's as we do, Corbon, let's rewind the episode back a little bit and talk about these stories, what we thought of them. Arthur versus the very mean crossing guard. What did you think of this one?
I thought it was sort of, for younger kids, a nice introduction to, I guess, sarcasm, kind of teaching them, like, hey, yeah, there's going to be adults who joke around with you and stuff like that, and it's not real, or they're just joking around with you. And as from personal experience, I wish I had this had seen this episode when I went to go work at my first job, because a lot of people there were very sarcastic and being nervous. It would have definitely helped out.
Okay, I'm not sure that I totally agree. Just because when I was a kid, I didn't get that he was joking the first time, at least. I understand what you mean, but I feel like it may get lost, at least to some kids. I mean, maybe I was just a dumb kid. I thought this was okay, I guess. I'm maybe on the lower end of okay. The stuff at the end where it's that little point, and maybe this is really a little point of DW, like not believing what Arthur and Brain believe, kind of didn't make sense to me. And there was a couple of, I think more the way that Arthur and Brain kind of twisted the situation in their minds really kind of, I thought, was the most entertaining part of, like, again, the return of the stick figures. Arthur's dream about the goons was probably my favorite part, just because it kind of didn't make sense in a really funny way. But I mean, it's just kind of, it felt a bit like, okay, so we didn't really learn anything about the characters. In fact, we introduced this new character that I strongly doubt we'll ever see again.
Yeah, I don't think we see him ever again.
Yeah, probably not. So, you know, it's kind of, I don't want to say throwaway. That sounds a little mean, but it's you know, it's just kind of there is what I'm saying. So I'm in the middle on it, maybe a little bit lower in the middle. DW's very bad mood, I think, is one that, if I'm going out on a limb here, I think is very well remembered by Arthur fans. I think, if not, you know, for good reasons, I think it's just a memorable episode, and that it's the one where DW like goes off, which DW in herself is very much like an icon of the show. I'd say almost equal to Arthur. So if you're a fan of DW, you might really like this episode. I did like kind of the performance aspect of it. I thought Michael Kalos, DW's voice actor, did really well in, you know, kind of going on an emotional dime as she did here. As I said a few times, sorry for the overuse of that phrase. So I thought that was kind of interesting. And, you know, my fiance is very good with kids, and she's told me before, you know, she's worked with kids and she's had kids in her house. She's had several foster siblings who will be this way, you know, throw tantrums or what have you to get attention and to push boundaries. So it totally makes sense for DW to be doing this at some point. It did bother me that, like, she never got kind of, maybe not a comeuppance, because, like, the whole thing is that, like, okay, so she's expressing her hurt feelings by being mean. But I mean, I guess it did bother me a little that, like, okay, so in the end, you know, her feelings aren't hurt anymore, everything's solved, but that she never got, like, disciplined for being mean. And this is a part where I just really think, like, Arthur's parents are a little bit too lax, and it bothered me a little bit. So that kind of kept the episode down. But I think this is if with the Crossing Guard episode I was on the lower end of in the middle, this is on the higher end of in the middle. It's not a spectacular episode, but I think that there are elements of it that work really well. And of course, it's all tied to DW, who I think is the star, and rightfully so. So, and I absolutely understand why this is a memorable episode. So this would be one where I can imagine this having the most revisiting value for people who aren't, you know, watching episode by episode like we are.
Yeah. I thought sort of, I mean, I didn't write much about it, but my only conclusion was it was sort of, I guess, a helpful thing to teach kids that sometimes you're not always, like, going to be invited to everything, and you can't overreact or get angry about it. You just have to keep going on.
Okay, and yeah, so there you go. A little bit, two that are kind of in the middle, and but one on either end. So, what did you think of this episode? You know what Corbon and I had to say, but what do you have to say about this episode or any episode in particular? Well, you can let us know. Before we get into the social links, actually, Corbon, if you could give us your plugs, where can we find more of Corban Garcia?
Well, I do stuff all over the internet, but I've sort of dialed a lot of things back. So nowadays, I'm only focusing on my podcast, Rocket to Anywhere. That's at the rta.space. It's a cool custom domain thing. And you can find my music and all sorts of other things, YouTube I've done. They're all at CorbanGarcia.com. That's CorbanGarcia.com.
I must commend you. Like, you are very on brand with everything. You are Corban Garcia on a lot of places here on the internet. And I mean, as someone who has, had a bit of a scattershot footprint, it's very easy to find a lot of your stuff. You're also on Twitter, which is where I found a lot of those links that you mentioned.
Yeah, I'm thankful for having a very unique name, so it's easy to get my name as my handle.
So it would be at Corban Garcia?
Yeah.
Very good. Okay, and as for the show itself, you can find us on Facebook, facebook.com/Elwood City Limits. On Twitter, we are at ECL Podcast. Corban Garcia was one of our very first followers when I started up Twitter, and I even wondered if it was a good idea. Tumblr, elwoodcitylimits.tumblr.com. You can email us just like Joshua and Isaac did this week, elwoodcitylimits@gmail.com. Finally, the ways to listen to the podcast. I will say this for the benefit of anybody who has been listening on SoundCloud. I've gotten a few, or a couple of inquiries over there of where did the podcast go, and are you guys still updating? We definitely are. So hopefully you found your way from SoundCloud. We are not updating over there anymore. We are now on Libsyn, elwoodcitylimits.libsyn.com. That's LIBSYN. You can find us on Apple Music. I know that the new update has kind of updated the podcast app a little bit, so hopefully that hasn't changed your listening experience too much. If you could leave us a rating and review over there, I'd really appreciate it. I actually have to go and look and see those ratings and reviews, see if anybody left any new ones, so I can thank you personally. And we are also on the Google Play Music Store. If there's anywhere else you would like us to be, just get at us at the ways that I mentioned. Well, Corbon,
I have a quick announcement.
Yes, sir.
The Monday after this episode comes out, if this comes out this Saturday, is October 23rd, and the new Arthur Halloween movie comes out. That'll be premiering on Monday.
Oh, very good. See, you are very on the ball. You're very attentive, much more than I am. I'm just going to look this up. You're right. I did see an announcement about this from the official Arthur Twitter page at ArthurPBS. It is the all-new Arthur movie, Arthur and the Haunted Treehouse.
Yeah. So they switched production companies. I mean, that's some of the background stuff. They have a new animating people. So I noticed some of it looks a little different, but it's still pretty good from what I've seen.
All right. I haven't dug into to season 20 or anything around there at all yet, so I kind of want to leave myself surprised for if we ever get to it. So a new Arthur special is coming up on Monday the 23rd. Check it out just in time for Halloween. Hope you're having a spooky good season. Corban, I want to say a special thanks to you for being my guest this week and for sticking through all of the little hiccups along the way. It's been great to have you, and it's been great to finally be able to introduce everybody to one of the people who's been here since the very beginning.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
And next week, no matter whom will be on with me, we're going to be talking about DW's name game and Finders Keepers. So if you want to keep up with us, you can always do that through a little bit of the old Google search, a bit of the Google foo. All right, so for Elwood City Limits, my name is Will Young. Corban, do you have anything to leave us with before we get out of here?
Go back home. Nope, that's not really good to say in it. No, I need to think of a better thing. I'm trying to remember what Francine said. I mean, what DW told Francine.
Oh, okay. Why don't you go back to your own home and stop bothering us?
Yeah.
I was thinking for a second, I'm like, go back home. That's deep, man. So go back home or go wherever you're going and take us along with you. Elwood City Limits. For Corban Garcia, we'll see you next time.
Bye-bye.